swinging around the city and having it look and feel and sound the way that it does takes hundreds and hundreds of people. I think that's the thing that separates games from other mediums, is that even though we have a writing team, everybody on the team is a storyteller.
Hi, I'm Michael, and welcome to Story Mode, the channel where we explore the storytelling power of video games. Today we are playing through the finale of Marvel's Spider-Man, the 2018 game developed by Insomniac Games. I'm joined by part of the Story Mode team, Brian Bittner.
Hello, hello.
And on the controller is Wyatt Strain.
Hello.
Excellent dramatic frame you have set up here for us, Wyatt.
Yeah.
And we're excited to have Jon Paquette with us today. Jon is the narrative director at Insomniac Games and was the story lead on Spider-Man as well as Miles Morales. Jon, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we dive into the finale, if you want to see us play through the opening of Spider-Man and hear us discuss with Jon how they went about designing a new Spider-Man story, just click the link in the pop-up there or down in the description below. But so here we are at the end of Spider-Man, and so a lot has happened at this point in the game, and I remember being blown away by how epic this all felt and the number of twists and turns that brought us to this point. So Jon, can you kind of like quickly summarize where we are at this point?
Yeah, we're deep in Act 3 of the story. At this point, our former mentor Otto Octavius has gone bad, and he's released what is called Devil's Breath on the city. So there's a citywide pandemic. People are starting to get sick. Soon people will start dying. Aunt May is one of those people who has started to get a little sick. So there's a little ticking clock here for us. And right now, Pete is going to try to find Otto because he has the anti-serum. And that's his way to save Aunt May and save the city.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, Wyatt, go try to save Aunt May and try to save the city. Let's do it.
Come on, Wyatt. We believe in you.
I also love that even though it's an open world, like the way it's designed here, just the narrative of the story and the design of the world is like you just want to go like fix everything now. You can go wander if you want, but it's like the game is just driving you to save the world now.
Yeah, and that was actually a challenge for us because, you know, in any kind of open world game that's structured like this, you know, we want to let the player go and do whatever they want to do in the open world. So we can't make the story too urgent because if you do, then you'll run into that ludonarrative dissonance, you know, and players will feel like they're not immersed in the story. So we tried our best to make all of the objectives, all the missions feel a little bit urgent and not too urgent. And you know, but at the end, we really kind of wanted to, you know, propel the story forward and get you going. So, hey, warning, this is your last chance, Wyatt. You want to upgrade. You might want to upgrade. So you know, what's really happening here is Pete's gone through a lot, as you can see on his face. And he had fought Dr. Octavius previously, and there was a scene where he almost died, and he got an operation. He's, you know, back on his feet. But he told MJ, I don't know if I can defeat him. And MJ's advice was, well, maybe Spider-Man can't, but Peter helped him build those arms. Peter knows what the weaknesses are. So that's what he's doing in this scene, is he's creating a new suit that will give him some special tools in order to help defeat Doc Ock. So now he's gonna, like I said, try and go wrest away that anti-serum from Dr. Octavius. It's not going to be easy, Wyatt. Good luck.
Thanks.
And so one of the things that I just love so much about this game, and I'm a structure nerd. We've talked off camera about how you're a structure nerd also.
Yep.
And so I want to talk about structure stuff, and Peter's relationship with all the different characters, but structurally, this feels like an epic story. And I remember getting to the midpoint and feeling like, oh wow, that was a really satisfying story. Oh wait, there's more. And then getting to the end of Act 2 of like, oh okay, because Dr. Octavius is introduced very early as kind of a mentor, and I remember as a player being, oh, interesting that he's here, but he's good, so he's in the story. Is he gonna turn in this story? Is this a setup for later? And so having that arc, that kind of slow burn arc of seeing him become the main antagonist was so impactful. And then how it also affects, like we were just mentioning, the open world kind of changes with each act and each movement. So I kind of just want to hear you talk about, like, how did you go about structuring this game to make it feel cinematic but still work as a video game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we
kiss. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. we had a lot of iteration. Those folks who work with me at Insomniac, they hear me say iteration a lot. But another way of saying that is writing is rewriting. And so we did a ton of outlines. We had a lot of treatments. And we had a whole room at Insomniac back in the days when we were all actually in the office, where we'd have all the index cards up, and each one representing one of the missions. And so structurally, we settled on a 3-act structure globally, but one of the things that I learned when I was in film school, I had a teacher, Frank Danielle, who taught this 8-sequence structure. And what was cool about that is we watched Fortune Cookie, great Walter Matthau movie. But what was cool is what we learned is that back in the day, you had to change the reels every 11, 12 minutes or whatever. And you string 8 of those together and you get a feature length film, right? So for that medium, the 10, 11, 12 minute kind of limit, that was about as much as you needed to tell a little mini story, right? So what I took away from that and tried to apply to game writing is that each one of your missions that you have for the player can be its own self-contained story, but you don't want to overstay your welcome, right? And you want to make sure that each one of those sequences or missions has its own beginning, middle, and end. It's got its own 3-act structure. And within the time that you're in that mission, you overcome whatever obstacles you need to overcome, and then you set up the next one, right? And in an open world game, what you need to do, as I was saying earlier, you need to set up the next one, but then leave it there for the player to go do with like not too much urgency, so that the player can feel like, oh, okay, I know I need to go do that thing eventually, but I feel like collecting some backpacks right now. So I'm gonna go, take some photos or collect some backpacks or do whatever I want to do. And then when they choose to go and start that next sequence or mission, we need to make sure that it's simple and clear enough so that they can pick right up where they left off. And I think that's something that a lot of folks tend to overlook in game storytelling, is how important it is for the narrative to be simple, because we consume these games in a different way. It's rare. A lot of reviewers do it, but it's rare for any of us who play games to play it all in one sitting, right? So what we do is we go in, we play a couple missions, or a couple levels, or whatever terminology you want to use, and then we hit a point where it's like, okay, I think I'm done, and I'll come back tomorrow or next week or next month. That coming back part is our greatest challenge as a game writer, because when you come back, we want to make sure that you're not coming back at a point where you're like, wait, what was I doing again? I have no idea what's going on in the story right now. The simpler you make the story and the simpler you make those handoffs between sequences or missions, the easier it is for your brain to jump back into the story at that point. So that's what I always, try to beat into my own head. And those of us who are working on our games is that try to be as simple as possible with your plot and your stakes. Make sure that you reinforce it a lot so that the player understands what's going on.
Yeah, I love that. That's very helpful. It's so interesting that different media are made to be consumed in different ways, right? So a movie or a play or an episode of television is meant to be consumed in one sitting, whereas a book or a season of television or a video game, more often, sometimes you might do it in one sitting, but more often than not, people are playing these things or consuming these things over weeks, sometimes months, and the more you can orient the audience back to like, wait, what was I doing? What is going on here? The better. So it's really cool to hear that was part of your philosophy.
Yeah, and back to your question about structure, Michael, like that when Brian was talking about season of television, that's sort of the breadth of content that we create, right? Like, it takes a lot of players, sometimes 20, 30 hours to complete the game. That's a lot of stuff for us to write and support and explain. And, so when you're looking at that length of story, you got to break it into chunks that are digestible for the audience, but that build over time to constantly have reversals, constantly have surprising events that keep players interested, but also simple enough so that they can follow along.
Yeah. Something that came to me is that one of the film professors I had once mentioned simple story with complex characters is a good way to do things. And I feel like that's kind of what you're describing here and what Spider-Man is. It's like at any given time, it's very simple to understand what Spider-Man needs to do, but you also understand why that's so emotionally fraught for him.
Yeah, you sound exactly like our creative director, Brian Intar. He said that a lot while we were making this game. Simple story, complex characters. The way that like I look at Doc Ock as a character in that way, because we knew early on fans are going to know that he's going to turn bad, right? Like Brian, you were saying when you started, or maybe it was you, Michael, when you started, you didn't know when he was going to turn bad,
Right.
But you knew that in Marvel stories, Dr. Octavius is a villain. So having that time up front for us to explore who he is as a character, what motivates him to turn bad, I think that makes him into a more complex character, because if we can understand why Dr. Octavius is attacking Peter right now, and we can empathize with that, boy, does that make the story, connect so much better on an emotional level. If we can understand not only what the hero is doing and why they're doing it, but also the villain, and we can see both sides.
Yeah,
it's also nice that you have characters like Norman in this game, for instance, who is generally speaking like not a supervillain, at least. So you never know what you're getting into. It's like Otto could be just the mentor for this game, and then we'll see going forward. So it's nice to have a sense. Okay, I know who this character is through the Marvel verse, but at the same time, that doesn't mean I actually know anything about what's going to happen in this game.
Yeah. I want to talk more about the character stuff, but something I was just struck by, like watching this sequence, is that it's such a great blend of cinematic storytelling, but also video game storytelling. Like it's interactive, you're playing it, but the moment that keeps popping out is when Doc Ock attacks you and it like nearly misses Peter, and then it ends up in the face of the camera. So you're seeing Peter near miss, but you're also like getting that experience for yourself. And I feel like that's, I imagine, a really hard thing to balance, is like you have all these different storytelling tools at your disposal, but that maybe just makes it even harder to figure out how you then go about telling that story.
Yeah. And big props to Bobby Connington, our animation director. He was really intent on making sure that this experience felt cinematic, and he worked really hard with his team to make sure that it had the scale and the spectacle of something you'd expect from an MCU movie, right? Except we add that playable element to it, which I think is one of the coolest parts about being a game writer, is that you can create these stories where, as a player, you can. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I get more immersed in a video game when I'm controlling that character, and I feel the highs and the lows more because I'm participating in what's happening, and it's always a hard balance. Like whenever you cut to a cinematic, you're taking away that player interactivity, right? But our goal was to make this feel like you're playing a Marvel movie, and so my hope is that when players play through the experience, they don't care that it cuts to a cinematic, because A, it looks gorgeous. B, the performances here by Yuri and Bill Salyers, the performances are amazing, right? And you know, you get so much emotional content from the cutscenes. You know, we said as a writing team, we never want to have a cutscene just for the purpose of having a cutscene or to hide some loads or whatever. We want, if you're going to cut to a cinematic, there better be a big emotional turn in that scene. There better be a reason, you know, a character change, a huge plot thread. Something needs to happen in that scene that really turns the story on its head.
Yeah, and that's when you can tell a game is working, is when it goes to cinematic and you don't just disengage, you know, because I've definitely done that in games. But with this and Miles Morales, it was just like I'm just as engaged when there's a cinematic as I am when I'm controlling it.
Yeah. By the way, big props to Christos Gage also for he wrote this scene really, really well done. And like I said, performances from Bill Salyers and Yuri Lowenthal. I remember shooting this on set and just having goosebumps as Pete walks away here and Bill yells after him, you know, Peter. It was just so good. Yeah,
and it's it's paying off, like the emotion that's been built up, because like you said, you had the time to get us invested in Doc Ock, in their relationship and all that stuff. And okay, so we're coming to like the scene now, which is like the most heartbreaking scene, but it's I was struck by by two things: the boldness of it and just the great writing of it. And so I kind of want to hear you talk about both, where, you know, back in, you know, in Lessons from the Screenplay, our video on The Dark Knight, we talk about how true character is revealed through choice under pressure. And I feel like this is one of the most compelling choices I've ever had to watch Peter Parker make. And it's like the quintessential kind of superhero choice of like, do you save the people you love or do you save everybody? And so, yeah, did you always know this was the choice that this story was going to end with? And, you know, was it hard to make that be the choice?
Well, what's funny is that, you know, I think I mentioned earlier, we did a lot of writing on outlines, right? And this came up relatively early on. And I remember the moment vividly because I was sitting kind of across the office from Brian Intihar, our creative director. And we were throwing out ideas about how we were going to end this version of the outline. And he pitched out the idea, you know, what if we killed Aunt May? And it was like a Tetris board where all the pieces like fit together in my head as like he said that, and I started to look at the outline and I started to see how a lot of these pieces could come together into this scene. And Brian remembers this too. I ran over and I hugged him, which was probably inappropriate, but I knew that we had arrived at the moment where this would be a memorable story because of what's happening in this scene. And so, you know, this is the ultimate moment of a Peter Parker Spider-Man story where this is a dilemma. Peter Parker needs to make a choice that's either going to be for him or Spider-Man, right? Like if he chooses to save Aunt May, he's not doing his job as Spider-Man.
Right.
And if he chooses to save the city instead of Aunt May, he's letting Peter down. He's giving Peter the worst heartache he could ever have. And that, you know, it all bubbled up into, you know, I think the right moment at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so heartbreaking, and like to be like, oh, that is the right choice, and I hate that it's the right choice when you had that moment of realization.
Yeah. And you know, the you were saying the performances in the previous scene, the performances in that scene also are amazing throughout, you know, the whole thing.
They are. And you know, Nancy Linari, who played Aunt May, she was amazing throughout the whole game. I think the best thing that she did is that from the moment you first saw her, you fell in love with her, right? And then that was a really important part, that we wanted to fall in love with Aunt May, because she's such a great person. And we knew that at the end, Pete was going to have to let her go. But she was so important to Pete. All the lessons that he taught her, everything he did for her, everything she did for him throughout the game, and to have him have to choose to let her go, just heartbreaking. And I also remember shooting that scene. And it's funny, the first take, Yuri had some raw emotion on that first take, and he went all out. And it was almost too much, right? Like Yuri, I don't know where he found this emotion from, but it came pouring out, and there wasn't a dry eye on set. And so when he did that, I think all of us recognized how raw and you know, fraught that was. But it was a little too much, and we need to pull back just a little bit, because we wanted this to be like a really quiet moment with those two at the end, so that tonally, the way that we moved into the epilogue here could work. Because this scene that we're watching right now, it brings the mood up a little bit. It's really hard to do pacing wise, to have the death of a character that you love, and then like a minute later bring it back up into having a scene where they kiss, right? So y'all can decide whether or not that was successful, but that was something we talked a lot about, is how to manage the emotions and the tone of these scenes back to back.
Yeah. I mean, I think it totally works. I think the 6 months later helps bridge that gap also. Yeah. And then it's, you know, again, the relationship between Peter and MJ has been going on this whole time also. So it's
not out of nowhere.
Right. It's as earned as everything else. And I feel like that's, like you were saying, the pacing, I think, of the story, I think, is really great, and how you're jumping between these subplots and all these elements that are pulling on Peter and pushing him, you know, toward and away from Spider-Man and those choices. I feel like they all tie up so nicely. Good job. It's really good.
Well, and going back to performances, you know, this was Laura Bailey as MJ. MJ and Pete in this game had a great chemistry. Laura and Yuri have a great chemistry. You know, they have a lot of fun on the set, and it comes through the experience. So here's a post-credit sequence. I love post-credit sequences. It's something that I really love in the MCU movies, and so we decided pretty early on we wanted to do one. So that's Najee, who plays Miles. He was so great throughout the experience. There was one scene where Najee did some ad-libbing. There was an earlier scene. He comes out when MJ and Pete are having a talk, and he's like, "I brought some water. Do you want some sparkling? I got Mountain Spring. I got, you know, whatever it was." Najee was amazing, and so. But this scene was super fun, because earlier in the story he got bit by a spider, and so now we're sort of setting something up here, and we're setting up a relationship between he and Pete, where Pete is sort of the big brother and mentor, and now we're left to wonder, okay, what's next?
Love it.
So cool.
I also love that we get to play as MJ and Miles in this game, because it really like helps us connect to them. And then especially obviously once we get into Miles Morales, the game, we've already spent time as Miles.
Yeah. Yeah, that was important to us. Like I mentioned in the first video that we did that, sort of the DNA of a good Spider-Man story, there's a certain number of things that we learned. One of the things we learned is that he's not a solo hero, right? He's always got friends and family that are part of whatever drama or action he's part of. They are a part of it too. And so that scene that I was talking about on the rooftop where Miles comes out with the waters, like that's the moment where Pete says to MJ and Miles, like, we got a city to save. We need to work together to do this. So having those characters as playable just makes them a more important part of the story.
Yeah.
And here we have Mark Rolston, who plays Norman, talking about his son Harry.
Such a great tease.
Yeah.
Want more. Yeah, and so ending is great. To kind of move to wrap up here, I remember, John, the first time I got a chance to talk to you, one of the things you mentioned was that, in a movie, the hardest thing you can possibly do is like blow up a plane or a spaceship or something. But the easiest thing to do is have two people kiss. And in a video game, it's exactly the opposite, where like the most expensive thing is to create, a compelling, like, intimate moment with people. So I'm curious to hear, either talking about that or just some other element of, what people might not appreciate about like what's so hard about making a game and delivering it in such a, impactful, high quality way.
Yeah,
that's why it shows us the gorgeous.
Yeah, look at that, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's so beautiful.
I think, well, just on the kissing thing, the thing that makes it hard is that when we do performance capture, the actors wear these head cams, so they're wearing a helmet with like this camera and this light that's like right here on their face and is pointed at them. So when you go in for a kiss, they all get, like, can't do it. So you got to do it in 2 takes. You got to do 1 take where they lean forward, but they're not like online with each other. And then you got to do another take where they don't have the head cams on and they actually kiss, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least that's the way we did it. I don't know how other games do it. But back to your bigger question, I think that one of the bigger challenges is like what Wyatt is doing right here, swinging around the city and having it look and feel and sound the way that it does, takes hundreds and hundreds of people to make come to life, right? And I think that's the thing that separates games from other mediums, is that you can't have like 1 or 2 or 3 people who are kind of directing everything that's happening, because there's so many moving parts to make all this happen. So what we do at Insomniac is we try as much as possible to be collaborative, to make sure that everybody has a voice, make sure that all ideas are welcome. And the thing that I say to all the people on the team is that, look, even though we have a writing team and our job is to ostensibly write, everybody on the team is a storyteller. And the more that you can use your tools in your toolbox to help tell the story that we're trying to tell, I think the more impactful the experience will be for the player, because it'll feel really connected. And I think we've all played games where it's you play the game and there are parts that feel super connected, and then other parts that don't feel connected to that part. And that's just the nature of what happens when you have so many moving parts. Like getting everything to come together and feel like a cohesive experience, and making you feel immersed in being able to run around New York City and swing like Spider-Man. It's probably the biggest challenge, I would say.
It's a super impressive feat. I feel like the more I learn about games, I just love how, like you're saying, how collaborative it is, and that I wish movies could be as collaborative sometimes and as iterative as you're able to be. Obviously there's always trade-offs and with any kind of medium, but I think that is something that seems to make games special, and it seems like when it all comes together really well, it's usually because of really great collaboration.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Awesome. Well, I could watch Wyatt swing around New York forever, but
he's good at
it. He's good.
They can swing around forever.
Jon, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. This game is great. We can't wait for what's coming next. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And reminder to viewers, if you want to see us play through the opening of Marvel Spider-Man with Jon, the link to that is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Bye-bye.
See ya.